one, which I guess I'm going to start this one saying this is the fucking easiest thing ever, because the video wasn't working. So what's going on, everybody? Justin Thomas here, and I got to check in the live chat here to see if you guys can hear us. The video is good, but welcome to one of the final Westworld prep live streams before the long awaited, I think it's been a year and a half before season 2 will be coming back, and we're finally there. I think we're 9 days out, and we're just gonna go over episodes 7 through 9. We're saving the finale for a standalone episode, but I have with me two great, not only content creators, but Westworld enthusiasts, guys that know their stuff. We're going to start with the great Robert from Deep Geek. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, thanks, Justin. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Robert. My channel on YouTube is Deep Geek. We look at Game of Thrones and Westworld, trying to get a little bit under the skin, insight and debate. And it's, as always, an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And the ambassador of YouTube, our future union leader. And I'm not going to say that again without just letting you know that it's not a joke. Like, seriously, we need to unionize, and you will be our head. You will have that up. AU Pack Mule, and tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
Thanks, Justin. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, of course, for AU Pack Mule. My name is John, and I love this show. I've been following it since, oh gosh, when the 70s TV movie came, or the movie came out. So I'm excited to be here. And Robert is just a wealth of information. Justin, you knock it out of the park. Thanks for bringing us together. And everybody in the chat, hello. Glad that you guys came, and hope you have some good questions.
Yeah, essentially today, and happy to have everybody, obviously, and thank you to everybody in the live chat. Essentially today, we're going to keep it fairly simple, not go into too much detail. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Charlotte Hale. I'm going to be talking about the little bit of foreshadowing, not even a little bit, the most, probably the best look into what Delos is really looking to do. That we have so far received. It has come from Charlotte Hale. So I'm going to be discussing what she does in these episodes 7 through 9. AU Pack Mule, who I'm going to have take the lead on this, is going to be talking about Maeve and Dolores's little journey throughout these 3 episodes 7 through 9. And then Robert is going to cap us off with just a broad sense of like what we should take from these episodes, and what is the larger plot points at hand for these, and just give us a good idea. Because again, the idea of these streams is for us to just really refresh our memories about Westworld season 1, since, you know, they said, hey, we'll be back in a few years. And we've been waiting. So AU, if you feel comfortable, I would like you to take the lead, because you had a great set of talking points that I'm looking forward to hear. So the way we'll do it is you'll go about them. I'll keep my mouth shut and be a good boy. And then we will go to first Robert and then myself for any, you know, additional input on that we may see. And of course, if you have any questions whatsoever in the chat, just ask them. It doesn't have to be about these episodes. It can be about Westworld in general. It can be about how awesome we are, anything. So go ahead, AU, if you are prepared.
Yeah, so Maeve really gets going. I don't know if you remember, but Dolores was in front of the Mariposa, and she said, these violent delights have violent ends. But you've got to remember, this was happening to Maeve as far as her control and increased control from the very beginning. She just, ever since her daughter died, she was overriding what the program was for her to continue in the loop. To the point where Ford really recognized her ability to make things happen even stronger than Bernard. So she was able to come into the Mariposa, for example, shut down the piano, talk to the bartender, tell her that, tell him that, her tab is cleared. All of the hosts, she was able to tell basically what to do. And then even Felix and Sylvester, she was able to get them to do what they wanted. And even though they gave her feedback and tried to shut her down, tried to brick her, she was able to override that by showing her strength to Sylvester. So I thought that was just another important part in both 7, not so much in 8, but definitely 9. By the time 9 happens, she's just absolutely, on level 10 as far as a boss goes. So no problem there. Dolores from 7 to 9 continues to show breakdown because they keep going back in the timeline to when her and William first met. And it just goes back to even after they have sex, it just continues to break down for her as far as where is she as far in the planet, and when is she really doesn't know. She goes all the way back to the original town where they were in, Escalante, I guess you could call it if you were Maeve. I mean, if you were, gosh, I'm breaking down on the time on the name, but yeah, even if you go all the way back there, where the little girl is telling her what the time is, she still doesn't figure it out. And then once she gets all the way back to the church where she had seen everybody totally collapse, she called out William when she realized that he was near, but it was actually the man in black. And she didn't even realize that it was not William anymore. It was the man in black. I thought that was a interesting journey that she's gone through that makes me think that she's never actually going to reach a full sentience. Would you agree, Robert?
What, the Dolores will never reach full sentience, do you mean?
Correct.
I mean, I think
because of her hiccups.
Yeah, I mean, I think she has. For me, there's a number of steps in this. There's the awareness that they are a host, and that there are other sort of memories back there from previous lives. That in and of itself does not seem to bring full self-awareness. Then you get the second step is actually when they start making their own decisions, which is where I think Dolores is at the moment. But I think that there's another step, or probably a step is the wrong way of saying it. Then there's a journey, which is the same journey that we as human beings have to go through, which is the actually breaking free from the upbringing, the programming that we've had up to that point. And so in the same way that as we become adults, as humans, we start to sift through all that we've learned as children, and some things we accept and embrace and other things we reject. And that's how we create who we are. I think that is what is going to happen with the hosts who have gained self-awareness, is they say Dolores will then start going through this process of working out who she is in season 2, not just the bits of programming that she's had in the past. So I think that's where I'm at on that. Do you want me to just have a couple of thoughts on Maeve as well? So I think on Maeve in these episodes, this is when she gets her superpowers. Really, you see, and you name checked a lot of this already, AU, but she goes in there, she gets her intelligence up to maximum. She learns how to wake up from when she's in this sort of sleep. She can self-start, as it were, and she gets this ability to manipulate other hosts. Now, this sort of sets her up for episode 10 and everything that she's doing in episode 10. But it also fundamentally, I think, sets her up for season 2, because what we've got is that although season 1, it looked like Dolores was the main host, in season 2, we have to start thinking, hey, Maeve is actually way more powerful and way more important. She can actually do things that no one else can do. And she has the potential, I think, to take on a lot of these kind of Ford-like, godlike powers in the way that we saw Ford in season 1 when he's like clicking his fingers or not even doing that, and like hosts stop and they do things and he triggers them with words and all. She can do all that. And so I think in season 2, we're going to see a lot more of her figuring out, is she going to use her powers for good or evil? And that I think is what we're going to see. So this is really the setup, not just to allow her to do everything she did in episode 10, but to her character development in season 2.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. As far as Dolores not being able to become fully sentient, number one, I've said this a million times, sentience is subjective. We base it off our own qualities. But here's the thing. The 3 main hosts that we should focus on, in my opinion, are Bernard, Dolores, and Maeve. AU, I like what you said about Maeve and Dolores. I liked it, especially, I don't agree with it, but I like it essentially because I think that you got what they wanted to convey, but we have to look at the way in which both of these characters, I won't put Bernard into this, but he's a third method that they use to bring these hosts to, sentience, being self-aware. So it was done through different methods. Now, we have the illusion that Maeve is in more control, right? That she has a better grasp on things. But the only reason that Maeve has more control and more grasp, or has the illusion and comes off to the viewer that she has more control, is because that was her programming. That was actually her staying in her loop. And then at the very end, when she decides to exhibit free will by leaving the train, that is when Maeve, yes, fully becomes self-aware. And they have said, again, the things I say on this channel are things that the producers and the showrunners have said. She is the only one that's exhibited free will, but that is her, I'll just call it like free form journey. Like Dolores is on, in my opinion, more of a, it's not as guided of a journey as Maeve or Bernard are going through by any means. The journey Dolores is almost left to her own, she's left to fend for herself. They put her in certain situations, but there's no coding within her like Maeve had that helps her along as much as Maeve has had. Maeve has had programming that let her in on the big secret of what she is, and then it was thrown into her at the very last moment. Only in the final episodes, not in episodes 7 through 9, does Maeve actually enter the kind of field that Dolores is in my opinion, because that's when she starts thinking off of what's programmed. Dolores is the best example of the organic transition. She is being led less by a leash, per se, for lack of a better term. She is not having the Ford influence. Ford specifically programmed Maeve to do this whole scenario. This whole thing is just another story. It's no different than her being at the brothel. It's no different than Dolores's, narrative. But her narrative was advantageous for her to obtain at least a quicker understanding of what she is, because her narrative before that was telling her about what she is. Dolores was up to her own devices. She was wandering around in the desert for 30 years trying to figure out what she was, and she was put through these traumatic events and all that. So I do agree with Robert as well about how Maeve is going to take on more of these god qualities, but again, that again makes sense, and she's going to be more of the Ford figure, because, and he probably did that as he saw her as a successor to him, in my opinion, because she's able to do that not because she's smarter, not because she's better, not for any other reason other than we become a product of our environment to a point. Her environment has allowed her to see that this thing can change her intelligence. Like, I'm trying to convey this thought. If I knew this iPad could be like, hey, I'm going to become, a super intellectual, successful YouTuber in 2 seconds, I'm going to use that. does that make me smarter than Robert over there, who already is close to that, but you know, doesn't know about that ability? I'm like, dumb Robert doesn't know about it, but he wasn't showed. You know what I mean? This wasn't revealed to him, so it's not apples to apples. But it's not like you're incorrect. I'm not saying you're incorrect or anything like that, because that's the best thing about the show is they show us these different journeys, but it's almost like it's like a different, you know, experiment, even though that sounds harsh, but you know, it's like guinea pigs. Bernard,
no, I think we agree, Justin, as far as Maeve being programmed by Ford. And we talked about this a little bit last week. I assume that you agree with that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, she is. Yeah, she's absolutely programmed by Ford, and she exhibits her own free will at the very end. So, it like the way that I just break it down is that Dolores's faltering, you know, her backstepping is not a sign of weakness or a sign that she won't attain complete sentience. She won't be like us. Everybody needs to be like us. Like I talked about that the other week. But it's just, you know, Maeve is just entering into that world, and she's going to have a different outlook because that's what she's experienced. And priorities will be different. You know, it's all about the journey that these people take, these beings take after they learn their circumstances. Her true circumstances were very softly and casually given to her, you know, compared to Dolores, who went through a like 30-year LSD trip, in my opinion. Also, Maeve has the ability not to like look at her, because Dolores, they had them thinking like humans, just not being able to, like humans, have free will. So before, Dolores holds her body in very high regard. Maeve has now been given the viewpoint that she can be fixed with a soldering iron, so she doesn't look at her body as this vessel like most humans do. You know what I mean? So they're just going to have these different approaches to things. And Bernard, one last thing I'll put on it, because it ties into what I'm going to talk about, is on rewatch, I talked about this last week about the trailer when he said dreams don't mean anything. His whole cornerstone was his reoccurring dreams. So okay, it's almost
not to cut you off, but I wanted to clarify that was Arnold that told her about the dreams.
Mm-hmm. In the trailer.
In the trailer.
Oh, okay. So okay, well there we go. So that was not Bernard saying dreams don't mean anything, because that's right. What threw me off, because it's like, well, how's he going to say that? Because his cornerstone is reoccurring dreams, but that also comes back to the issue of like Maeve doesn't care if it's a made up cornerstone. It's still how she feels. So she's going to pursue it. Dolores might not feel the same way. Bernard might not feel the same way. I think it's interesting to see the approach they take on this. But yeah, I think that those are excellent points, and it's going to be that's what's going to set up this divide between all three. They're not on track.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I would add on this, actually, Alexandra in the chat had a good point here, that it's not a competition between Dolores and Maeve. They are. We're comparing and contrasting them, but they're not being set up as opposites. But I think it's worth noting that Dolores, yes, she's had this kind of like 35 year training program, but really it took incredibly heavy coaching from Ford at the very end to actually get her to do that last step. If you remember, he like goes right and literally says, look at this picture, that you think that's a picture of God, but actually that's a picture of your brain. Hey, you know what, here's your old gun, and here's what you did before. Hey, why don't you just have a think about that? So he really heavily coached her to try and get her over that line. But Maeve, on the other hand, we don't know, but the implication is that was entirely her getting over that line when she sat down on that train and she saw the mother and daughter, and something flicked in her brain. As far as we can tell, and we don't know, but as far as we can tell, that was just her without any specific coaching to push her over that line.
Yeah, and I mean, just of course, in Alexandra, I don't know if maybe I just wasn't clear. That was my point I was making, that it isn't apples to apples, and in no way is it a competition. You know, I say that maybe some people see it as a competition, but it's not comparable because of the different methods. I just think that we have seen these hosts, Bernard in particular, and Dolores and Maeve, both go through a process, but they've been going through this process in different ways. Yeah, I'm that was my whole point, is that it is not a competition. I don't think it's like who's better. That was the first thing I said, is it's
local real estate agent.
Real estate? What's going on?
Sorry.
Stop making big money buys, Trump. buying up palaces. But yeah, no, I agree. I hope that was clear that, yeah, I don't think it's a competition at all. And again, it's all subjective, so it can get even more, that line gets more and more blurred. And yes, Robert, at the end, you know, he pretty much does have to like force it upon her with the gun and all that. I think it all across the board at the very final episode, which we'll talk about in a different stream, they all have some pretty heavy-handed handling of how they make that final step. They might get there in different ways, but Ford was highly involved in every way. As far as the train thing goes, and I just want to mention this one time, it's not that I think that I think that a lot of people think I just say things out of opinion and stuff like that. AU, I'm calling you on this with the Elsie thing. She's back. Okay, how many times, like, when I say, okay, listen,
I knew that was gonna come up.
I'm not, but here's the thing, it's like a lot of people, like, they're like, oh well, he's saying this or he's saying that. Listen, the one thing that I try to make different about my channel is I don't put out this just like wide speculation about bullshit. I have been following every single legitimate, source that I can find for casting and everything. Watch my backlogs of videos. When it comes to these situations like the train, I think what really muddied these situations up was Game of Thrones with Kit Harington saying he was really dead. And I really think that's an exception to the rule. When you have producers telling you things and showrunners strictly saying, and they don't use ambiguous language, they don't, use it's like, well, it could go like this or that. When it's very straightforward, like they said, that Maeve is absolutely the first host and the only host to exhibit free will when she makes a decision on the train. Everybody can argue, and that's part of the fandom, and that's part of the fun. But common sense should tell people, besides get rid of Kit Harington lying to you. I know it's hard. It broke my fucking heart too. That is not the norm. A producer is not going to come out in an interview. A showrunner is not going to come out in an interview and say things like Elsie is back, say things like Dr. Ford is dead, say things like the only person has free will so far as exhibited free will so far as Maeve, if that's not the case. It's different if they suggest it. When these comments are made, I am paying attention and I am delivering it to you guys. I am just repeating what they said. It's not like it's just like my opinion, and I think people think I come off a little bit like, no, that's the way it has to be. I'm just saying that that's most likely definitely the way it's going to be, and it's a very low percentage of that not being the way it is, because then nobody's going to believe anything they say, and that's not good for business. And again, I know Kit Harington said he was dead, but come on, people.
But he was
book readers.
He was dead.
Yeah, exactly. But he said he wasn't coming back. So everybody's like, well, they did that with that. That's always the argument, and it's like, well, that's really the exception to the rule. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, Elsie is back. It's been so clear, AU, and you don't believe me. You're tweeting, trying to figure it out after. Come on, no faith in me, brother.
You didn't follow the thread, but it's okay. I believe you.
Now.
Not only that, but through that thread, we got Shannon Woodward to reply. That's what I love about the whole thing.
Oh, I know. I love it. Yeah, they're great about replying on Twitter. Jimmy Simpson, now her. I'm just saying, I'm like, you're hurting me, brother. I told you. I sent you. And then I sent you source material, too. I was like, he might not believe me.
Just follow the thread. You missed the whole thread. The conversation in the thread was totally different than what you're upset about.
Well, tell you what, I believe you both. Does that help?
No, the pain that you caused me, and I understand that maybe you're trying to bring me to my center of the maze by subjecting me to this pain. But when I saw that, I honestly was like, that motherfucker. Honestly, like I said it on the stream, I sent you the Entertainment Weekly article where they said these stars are confirmed coming back for season 2. I was like, well, he might not believe me because, you know, I can get kind of silly at sometimes, but maybe he'll believe this. What? No, I did not. No, I did not. No, I did not. I have been, and I will, whatever, you know, hey, it's all part of the fun. But what I'm saying is what I say on this channel is not just me thinking that would be so cool if Ford came back, or how about if Elsie came back? I bet she's such a fun character they couldn't bring her back, or they wouldn't not bring her back. I'm saying it because I read an article, not from a blogger, not from anybody. I read a source. You know, I have multiple sources from legitimate journalists saying this is happening. That's all I'm saying. And then if you're saying I'm lying, you're saying they're lying. So at least I'm not all to blame. That's it. That's my call out of the week. So
I'll take it.
Yeah, punishment has been given. And this is the beginning of the streaming weekend. So we'll see.
Good news is Elsie's going to come back.
Yeah. They started with
that's good. That's good.
There was audio clips on Discover Westworld right after that episode of her voicing. It couldn't have been more clear, AU. I am mad at you still. I'm not forgiving you. All right, so I will move on. I promise I'd be good. We had a just listen to you. Thank you, Carrie, so much. Mm-hmm. And a great supporter. Let's see. Broke Black Man talking about Funko Pops. Okay, here's what I want to show you really quick. This is called being fiscally responsible, BBM. Instead of buying every single Funko Pop you can get your hands on, because I know when things are in stores and you have like money in your bank account or pocket, you're like, well, there's no other choice. Might as well buy it. I kind of have to. Okay. The first one I got, this was a Christmas present from my family, is the Man in Black. Now, I like him because I really agree with everything he does. They're like, hey, Justin's just like that asshole. And then they got me Floki because he's also a big weirdo. So they're like, okay, these two guys fit him. And they're like, well, would you be interested? I got a call from my parents. They're like, oh, you know, because they watch the channel. They don't probably like it, but they watch it. They're like, he's into this bullshit. So let's see. Let's try to make him happy. Does he like Funko Pops? I'm like, no. I'm like, because if I get a few, I'm going to have to get like the whole collection. And then I'm going to be like BBM with all the integrity and, you know, the good characteristics that you exhibit. But I got 2 Funko Pops. That's all I've got. Now, these are from 2 different shows, but not anymore. Skarsgård has joined Westworld, motherfucker. Yeah. This is a savvy buy. I have combined my collection. These were once 2 separate shows. Now work on both levels. In your face, BBM. Funko Pops, you might need to go to a rehab for it. I don't know if it's 12 steps, but it's a few that you need to take. Speaking about steps, let's move forward, and I'm just going to talk quickly about transition. Quickly about Charlotte.
Smooth. You're a professional, man.
Hey, keeping it real. Talking about Charlotte Hale. I think Charlotte Hale is our best example of a character that gives us the best insight into what Delos really wants. There's a lot of theory crafting about her, which again is fun, but I try not to do. I am thinking about doing the Who's a Host segment and even doing a theme song for it, which I will probably contract you, AU, for your good voice over work. But Charlotte Hale brings up a lot of questions. She answers a lot of questions, but just like Westworld, she brings up a lot more questions than she answers. So when she comes into the picture, she's obviously very, very free with her body. She's very, very confident. She's not a likable character for most. And she's overall the best example of looking out for what Delos wants, not what for Delos Destination wants. She really stresses the importance of the information, not just the IP as in like building the robots or the host, sorry, or the beans. I don't want to be offensive to any hosts watching. But she really talks about how it's really not even about that. It's about the information that they're collecting, our little research project. And when Ford is talking to her, he says, well, aren't you afraid I'm going to go smash all my toys? She goes, no, that's the beauty of this thing. That's how good we are about knowing, you know, what everybody's intentions are, knowing every little detail. So it seems to me that it's pretty clear that they're using the host without a doubt more so for just collecting information. And I talked about this in the last stream. Now, the question is, why does she go about getting that information out in such a incompetent manner? She recruits the dumbest person on. I mean, she recruits the guy she just saw pissing on the map an episode before to help her. She's like, I mean, if you're going to be in cahoots with anybody, you don't usually pick the guy pissing on shit. You're not like, well, that's my main man. That's the guy. Yeah, that's it's like, you passed my test. So there brings up, at least in my mind, and not all these crazy theories. Some people are like, she's Arnold's kid, and it's crazy. But she could be a host. I definitely am not ruling that out. And she could still be in line with Ford's plan, even though Robert will bring up a valid point that it doesn't jive in that. No, I'm not saying anything bad. Like, you bring up a valid point, it won't jive in that. But there are a lot of things that won't jive in that with this. I'm just saying I'm not ruling out her being against or not being against Ford because her plan is so incompetent. And I've talked about this before, about sometimes in these series, we need to decide if our characters are the dumbest people in the world or the smartest. Now, what I've found is the best way, if you rewatch season 1, to kind of like tell who's a host and who's not, is by key characters ignoring just blatant issues. We see this with Bernard, a lot of foreshadowing. We also see this with Stubbs. He's very good at being a security, head of security in the first few episodes, but then he becomes very, very incompetent when it's convenient for Stubbs to be incompetent, when it's convenient for Ford for him to be incompetent. Charlotte Hale, her actions essentially do lead to those hosts being able to come out in the season finale. I think that Charlotte Hale is going to play a huge, huge role in the Delos the huge overarching narrative of this story. She is the one that came there that knows things that other people don't know. One other thing she brings up here when she's talking to the man in black is that she says, you're the one that has kept Ford around. You're the one that bailed him out. And I believe we're going to get to see how that happens in the next season. But she seems a little bit distraught with him because she interrupts his game and she's like, well, I need your vote, but you're the one that kept him around in the first place. So what is it that Ford did that the man in black saved him for? And how do those interests, how are they in line with each other? She seems to be, everybody's an unreliable narrator in this story, but she seems to be a character that makes a lot of very, very intelligent decisions, but then she makes, again, blatantly stupid decisions, which either leads me to believe she's incompetent or she's a host or she's working with Ford. I'll go to AU on that one first. Pretty much, what are your thoughts about Charlotte Hale? What do you think chances are that she is a host? And do you think there's any chance that she was working with Ford?
I don't think she was a host because of the sex scene with Felix. It would be too obvious that because she's the one that told, and I don't know why that name's, who was the head of behavior that was killed?
Teresa. Yes,
Teresa Cullen. So she's the one that told Teresa we needed a blood sacrifice, and that's what got Clementine killed during this little sex scene with Felix, Hector. I wanted to say Felix. Anyways, sorry, too many names. But the information that Ford was able to get during that time was that there was going to be this whole setup with Clementine and the programming. And I think that wouldn't have been done the same way if Charlotte was a host. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It really comes down to, how much control Ford had. How much did he leave up to chance? Because again, it comes down to how much behavior did Ford predict? Even, I know you accidentally brought up Felix, but It's like, but the point is, I mean, it works out because it's like, well, did Ford just say, okay, Maeve will be interacting with these two guys because they're impressionable, they're easily influenced. You know what I mean? Are they hosts? There's also the theory that I there's holes in this theory, but we never see a I don't know if you guys have heard this one, a scene in season 1 where there's not a host present. That with William and Logan falls through with me, but again, you can't say for sure. I will say for sure, but you can't technically say for sure that Logan's not a host and vice versa. You know what I mean? But I don't really like that.
It's possible that Logan was the host?
No. I'm saying that a lot of people are a firm believer in this theory that we have never seen a scene in Westworld so far without a host in it. We always one person as a host, and that's a big argument with Elsie and Stubbs, is one of them has to be a host because we see a standalone scene with just those two in it. Mm-hmm. So anytime that's the point. Anytime you see that, this is okay, I know people misinterpret what I say all the time. So I'm gonna have a comment. That's not true, Justin, you asshole. I don't get what you're saying. Okay,
sighed. That was all I did. I just sighed.
No, I wasn't even. I didn't see that. I didn't see your sigh.
Oh, now he's gonna be mad at you.
I didn't see your sigh.
How dare you sigh?
I did not see it, but I'm very, very pissed off about it now. No, not my theory, people. I don't know. I mean, I need to get a disclaimer. Not mine, and I don't think that this is something that has a lot of substance to it. I'm just saying that there's a lot of people that believe this, that we've never seen a scene with characters there's not one host interacting since the first season is supposed to be specifically from the POV. Again, people, not me saying that's the way it is. Okay, Jesus Christ, not me saying this.
I didn't accuse you of saying it. I just picking up on that. I that's the kind of theory that I just do not know where it comes from. Is that no one has said, yeah, this is all done. There has to be a host in every scene. So that's just people making stuff up. And with just incidentally with Elsie and Stubbs, just sort of following through the logic, they were the two people that Ford took out of the scene. He got them off of hunting him down, basically figuring out what his plan was. So Elsie was going and investigating, and she's quite a clever cookie, and she was starting to figure out what was going on. And so Ford got Bernard to get rid of her. He came up behind her and he grabbed her, and that's where she went. If she were a host, he could have just clicked his fingers and wiped her memory. So I'm pretty sure Elsie's not a host. Ditto Stubbs. The reason why Stubbs was not around in episode 10 to be leading the security, as you would expect, was because Ford did not want the head of security to be around while he was doing his big ambush. And so if Stubbs had been a host, again, he could have just clicked his fingers, but he didn't. He got his go-to hosts, the Ghost Nation, who are the people that he uses to do all those odd little tasks that he needs to be done. He got to them to capture Stubbs. So to my mind, that the internal logic doesn't work for either of those characters being hosts. You have to see how Ford reacts to these people and how he uses them, because there were no other witnesses. He could have done whatever he wanted with them, but he chose to take them out of action rather than just do some sort of strange Ford host thing.
Yes, and that is my, again, disclaimer, the way I believe that as well, people. I'm not saying that is my theory. I think it's stupid. I think, well, I shouldn't be me. Wait, yeah, it's fucking stupid. Okay, I'll just say it. And I already said it. My thoughts are out. Here's the thing. I agree with Robert, especially on Elsie, because that comes back to what I'm talking about tricking the audience just to trick the audience. Let me do another Game of Thrones reference. They ended up cutting the scene that would have made the Sansa and Arya and Littlefinger plot not as atrocious. Yes, fucking stupid. Because they cut out the scene where they're planning it with Bran. So What happened was what we saw as viewers was just them putting on a charade, not for anybody, because that's what Robert's talking about. Elsie was looking into things. There was nobody else around. So why is she, if she was a host, why would she so adamantly looking for, you know, into this stuff if she's not trying to fool somebody else? Because like Robert said, Ford would just wipe her mind. So it doesn't add up, and that's just tricking. That's cheap. It's not good storytelling. It's just tricking the audience. It's actually offensive. People don't take well to it. Obviously, there's people that just think there's no host. You know, there has to be a host in every scene. So I don't know how much credit we should give everybody. But again, yeah, it doesn't work. It's usually something they won't do, is they won't just, you know, try to throw us off for the sake of throwing us off. There has to be a reason within their world why that's happening. Elsie has to be acting this way. If that's not the real way she's acting, she has to be doing it for a reason other than tricking us. I will argue a point with Stubbs. Now, again, disclaimer, don't think that the hosts have to be in the damn scene. It doesn't need to be one or the other, but there's more of a case for Stubbs since he is so adamant about his security duties before. I'm not talking about this, the finale where he disappears. Because again, we really don't see how he disappears. We know it's Ghost Nation. We don't see what happens after that. We could get a scene where it goes down completely different. I'm not saying that's likely. I'm just saying there's more of a case for it because Stubbs ignores, like, he's so on the ball when Dolores goes missing the first time, and then Dolores is missing for weeks, and he's just like, oh well. Teresa dies. Oh well. You know what I mean? Like, he's ignoring so many things before he goes missing, and those things he's
Even
ignoring.
when he brings it up to Bernard, and Bernard denies the whole relationship. He's just like, move on. Let's do something else. Yeah.
Exactly. Great point. Yeah, it doesn't look like anything to me. So yeah, I think there is a case. I would, if I'm a betting man, and if I had the bet on it, I would bet that Stubbs is a host over a lot of the other people, like even over Charlotte. It would make more sense. But again, it comes down to, is this good storytelling? Or is this an example of bad storytelling where it's just not consistent? Because they established Stubbs is the man that is on point in the first episode of the series. And then I'm talking about way before he goes missing, he shows himself not to be the man. And perfectly said by AU. He's like, I noticed you were having, you know, and first off, breaking the rules. Shame on you for boning on De Los property, Bernardo and Teresa. He's like, I noticed that woman you were banging is dead or missing now. And he's like, yeah, none of that's true. He's like, okay. And you know, so I mean, I don't know. That doesn't seem like the crack security to me. But Robert, you know, after I'm done yelling at everybody, what are your thoughts, just general thoughts about Charlotte Hale? Because this is when we get our initial, you know, introduction to her, and she definitely, without a doubt, gives us most insight to what they are truly looking to do. And then she picks her crack team, the guy pissing on stuff, and also hit on her at the Mesa bar like an idiot. So, how do you take all that?
Well, I think she is the representative for us of Delos in season 1. That's her role in the show. She gets introduced as being, so once Teresa's gone, she is the company. Lee Sizemore clearly, as you so eloquently put, is not. He's not really in on it. He's always slightly above, you know, just keeping his head above water. He seems to be quite a competent coder, but that seems to be about it. So what we needed in season 1 was this representative of the company and someone who can start dropping those hints about what the bigger storyline is. So that's what she is. I don't, at the moment, yes, she could be a host, but I haven't actually seen anything to suggest that she is. I can't actually. I mean, the only thing, we were talking about this beforehand, actually, the only thing that doesn't chime right with me is the fact that, I mean, I wouldn't wish to guess her age, but she looks very young to be the chief executive officer of what seems to be a multi-billion-dollar organization. So there's something going on there that I don't quite understand. So hopefully we'll understand a little bit more about that. We'll get to learn a little bit more about that. But no, I think fundamentally she is there. I really like the character. She is the person who is being Delos on the ground, and we will see that, I am sure, carried over into season 2, when she is the person who is focusing in on what Delos wants, not just running a park, but what they actually want. And so that's why one of the many, many bits of sort of viral or Easter eggy kind of materials that they've put in front of us for season 2 was that little clip of her apparently accessing the system to try and find where Peter Abernathy was, because he is the man wandering around the host, wandering around with all of the code in his head. So her priority is going to be trying to find him.
Robert, can I ask, do you think the decision to have Peter Abernathy be the carrier of the information, do you think that was Charlotte's worst decision, or do you think it was Lee Sizemore putting it in there and creating a story for him to leave?
Well, I have to admit, I need to rewatch that bit, because the bit that I can't quite remember is how she decided on that one host. Was it pure guesswork or
Absolutely.
whatever?
It was just
she
was walking through.
He's the least composed one because he's been in there the shortest, other than the other raider.
So if that's the case, and as I say, so vaguely from memory, I thought it was just that he's the most recent one that would put in there. She was vaguely aware of him, so they picked that one. It seems to be that's just pure accident. It seems like quite a heavy coincidence that this is also the person that Ford has been using for triggering all of his plans through season 1. But hey, it's a story, so we need these kind of coincidences sometime. Using Lee Sizemore, I think, is simply just a matter of the fact that they did not have a cast of thousands for season 1. Who else did we have who possibly could be there as a coder? Actually, that's pretty much it. So they used the character that was there rather than create a new one just for that purpose. So I don't read too much into it. I think, yes, he seems not the optimal person to be having on your side, but he seems as if he probably wasn't going to do the job that she wanted him to do. He just turned up and Abernathy wasn't there.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I guess to disagree with myself, I mean, let's look at, he's disgruntled, obviously. I mean, I don't know if but I mean, I think so. He was pissing on the map. So that's if you want
We've all done that, Justin. Let's be honest.
Yeah, so
but like corporate headquarters.
But but I mean, I guess if you're looking for somebody to commit espionage, you're going to want to have somebody that, first off, is somebody you can throw under the bus once it's all done, which no tears are going to, except for me because I like him, are going to get shed over Lee Sizemore. And also somebody that's going to be pretty easily influenced because he's not seemingly all that bright and he's not happy with the company. So he wants to give them a fuck you. She is making him feel like he's important because she tells him that. She's like, oh, they got you doing busy work. And he's like, what? He's like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, hold on, I got to pee. She's like, well, go to the map. The map's right around the corner. But no, all jokes aside, she does say that. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Something like, oh, they got you doing busy work. And that's how influenceable he is. He's like, what? They're taking advantage of me? He's like, I'll do the whole thing, whatever you need. So yeah, those are the people that Stalin has erased from pictures. A lot of Lee Sizemores are photoshopped out of pictures, during the red era of people that were used, you know what I mean? Not to get political, but it would make sense that if you need somebody to do some dirty work for you, so you don't want that person sticking around and talking. So, hey, no, like I said, not too many people at Lee Sizemore's wake. But do you think, since and obviously I agree too about Peter Abernathy, not only is he the freshest host in that cooling system, which they evidently can't get a heating and cooling person over for, but also, I mean, they just weren't going to use one of the extras that were willing to sign that paperwork saying that you will be naked on horses and engaging in bestiality. They didn't want to give that job. They gave it to Louis Hertham. I don't know him personally, but the Shat on TV guys, who are the best damn Westworld podcast you will listen to. These guys, they're great guys. I hope to have them on. It's unbelievable. If you listen to their podcast, you would think they had inside information. You listen to some people and they were so far off. Sometimes the shit on TV people, it makes me mad how much they were on. But Lewis actually did their podcast intro. That's how cool of a guy he is. He's a very great actor who was in True Blood. I love True Blood, and that's my guilty pleasure. And don't hold it against him, because True Blood.
I'm so sorry.
I know. So is everybody around me.
Confession will be on after the show.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, I mean, it's obvious you're going to use, and I'm so happy he's coming back. But yeah, I mean, a lot of you know, questions are up in the air about Charlotte. And of course, like I talked about in my stream earlier, it's a show that understands the appeal of theory crafting. So making characters have some inconsistencies and leaving doubt is very advantageous. You know what I mean? Now we're dissecting everybody's name to see if it can make somebody else an anagram or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, every single time I see a new character, I'm like, well, that could definitely be Frank Haas. You know what I mean? So yeah, it works. It works. So yeah, I agree though, Robert. Yeah. I mean, the extra in the back, you know, going full nude wasn't the guy they're going to pick to carry the storyline for season 2. So yeah, there's a little bit of practicality in it, but there's also, I guess, Costume Design Co. is in the Lewis Hertham Costume Co. was in True Blood, which he probably doesn't appreciate me saying. But yeah, he's an excellent actor. So I'm really happy he's coming back as well. But yeah, you have to like go into like the practicality of it. And I don't know, Costume Co., if you could do a breakdown on the costumes of that cold storage. A lot of those guys, was that all practical? Because hey, I'm not saying anything, but was there those guys didn't look cold. Those guys didn't look cold. That's all I'm saying. Like their obsession with size.
That was the funniest thing you've said all day.
hey, it's still young. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like Elsie says, like that snarky little Thelma. Who I'd hate to waste all your talents. Now we're gonna go give it over to the fantastic Robert from Deep Geek for a concise overview of episodes 7 through 9, leading up to the finale. This really starts off our final act of season 1, up for the big the money shot of season 1, episode 10. So Robert is gonna try to wrap it up in a nice little package for us. No pun intended. The cold storage package. No pun intended. Go ahead.
Well, we all saw costumes on them. I don't know what's going on in your mind, Justin, but you know, as far as we are all concerned, they were fully clothed.
I think it's clear.
So we've talked about a lot of the stuff in these episodes already, actually. But so I think what I'll do is I'll just sort of give a sort of an overview of that, and the one strand that we didn't really pick through in great detail was this interplay between Ford and Delos, Ford and Charlotte, which through these 3 episodes, we just saw it ramping up and up and up. So we've got, first of all, we had this whole game that they were playing with Clementine. They brought her in, they being Charlotte and Teresa, they brought her in and made it look like because of the reveries, she was suddenly very dangerous. That was just some excuse to try and make Ford look bad and to try and get Bernard out of the scene. Ford came back at them by getting Teresa out of the scene in a slightly more dramatic way. And then you get Charlotte coming up with her plan to actually, well, I'll get the data out another way by uploading it to Abernathy. Then you get Ford sort of accelerating his own plan by getting rid of making sure Stubbs gets abducted so that the head of security is not there for when he's doing his big plan. And there's also a little bit which we completely overlook, is that we get Bernard has a couple of times in this, he gets this awareness that he is a host. Firstly, when he's talking to Ford, and then also when Maeve comes across him and she tells him that he's a host. And so he is then starting to go through this self-awareness process. We often talk about Dolores and Maeve, but he's also doing it himself in a different way. And so obviously he's a lot more kind of cerebral in his approach. So whereas Maeve was very much charging through the action until this moment when she sat down and then something clicked, and with Dolores, who was just going through the maze until she gets ad infinitum, really, until she gets this heavy coaching. Bernard, you can almost see him trying to work out exactly what is going on, and he has these kind of conversations with Ford about whether or not he would be on Ford's side if the hosts are sentient, what he's going to do, and he decides that he wouldn't want to be on Ford's side because Ford wants to play a longer game. Now, Ford doesn't reveal his whole plan at that time. At that point, I think probably for reasons that they didn't want us, the viewers, to know. But let's not forget that he got there before Maeve in terms of this real kind of deep thinking about who he is. Perhaps not full sentience, but he was ahead of the game. William and Dolores, I think, is another thing I would draw some attention to, because this is the point where we actually see them move from they're going off on this little jaunt around Westworld, and they move to a position where they're actually really breaking free from their old characters, and we get Dolores, who breaks free completely, and she ends up going back to the chapel in Escalante, and at the very end of episode 9 she encounters the Man in Black. And this is through this we're getting more and more hints. Now we talk about it obviously, but we were getting more and more hints that these were different timelines, because she got injured badly, and then next scene she's not injured at all, and she seems confused about this, and that's because she's working in 2 different timelines. And that's when they really started ramping up the clues that there was a lot more going on here than we initially thought. Maeve, I think we covered already. Really, this was her gaining the powers and the abilities that she needed, not just for the big escape attempt in episode 10, but also for her story arc in season 2. And so I think as a whole, these 3 episodes, there's some of the best, because they take what we had in the first few episodes, which was setting the scene. Then the action sort of dipped a bit, where they were just sort of playing through the plot lines. But here is when they're just putting all of the bits into place for the season finale and beyond, because it was very clear that they were already thinking there, not just about we're trying to set things up for this one finale. They're thinking about probably 5-season arc. So that's why I really like these episodes. Episode 10 is when it all comes together, but episodes 7 to 9 is when it all gets set up.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get a lot of the foreshadowing for what can come. And one more thing about, another issue that does come up in one of these episodes with the it's episode 7 with the killing of Teresa, about what Ford was making, and how I always say I believe that's more of a just showing that's operational. You brought up a good point that I don't think he doesn't think that, and I agree with you that it's like going to be like a full medical center for them. I think that if they do need something like that, that has already been foreshadowed, and that's hypothetical if they need it. I don't really think it's going to come up with the hosts, the Wyatt followers, the guys in masks who have managed to somehow stay out in the world. But this one was just my opinion, but I have just found the article and I'll link it. Producers have confirmed that, not just me, so if you don't believe me, producers have confirmed that was not a specific host, that their intent was to show you it's possible for hosts to be made outside of Westworld. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, Robert, I mean, like these last 3 episodes leading up into the season finale, it's one of those series that it comes together so well for how complex it is. And if you want to dig for plot holes, like I said, there's plenty of them. But the other advantageous things to having unreliable narrators is it's not always a plot hole. It's that person was, you know, a host, or that person was not mentally stable. Like the girl on the train, that whole book is, you know, about a unreliable narrator who's not mentally stable. It's like, it doesn't have to jibe because the person's a little bit loopy. So sometimes people can view that as cheap, but I think that Westworld pulls off the best of both worlds with using the unreliable narrator in a way that pays off in the end. You could, like I said, you could get a person that could do, you know, the odds on it in Vegas. Like, I'd still like to see about like how many moving pieces would have to come together for that to really work out. And it might not be great. It's more of a roulette wheel thing than a blackjack thing, but it still pays off, and it's so ambitious. So, and also they didn't have that fleshed out as much as they wanted to, and I'm grateful they took so long. Even though it's been a hell of a wait, but I think it's going to be worth it. 9 days, guys. Come on. How long we've been talking about Westworld? Now we can finally see. I'm almost now it's like, I don't know if I want to see it. You know what I mean? No, I'm joking. But yeah, it's going to be so exciting to see the opening credits of a new Westworld. And I think very well put, Robert, as always. I will. I have some announcements to make, but I want to get any final thoughts from AU Pack Mule as well on anything Robert says, if you have them. If not, just let us know what you're doing and what you're looking forward to, and so on.
All I really want to say is thanks to all the people that are in the chat. I'm really glad that you guys came. It's been a lot of fun. Robert, again, I can't understand how you stay up so late just to put up with us. It's just phenomenal. Thank you very much. And Justin, thanks for bringing us together. As far as the thoughts go on these 3 episodes, I think we get a lot of information, and it's just such great television. I really can't say how good of a show I think this is. And thanks again.
No problem. I really want to answer a question I just saw in the chat. I guess, Robert, you spoke about lobotomy in a stream. I don't know exactly what you said, but what the deal is with Clementine's lobotomy, all that's been confirmed again by the producers and showrunners, is that lobotomy has drastically changed Clementine, and it's not reversible. So that's all we can say. As far as it not being a real lobotomy, I mean, what's a real lobotomy? I mean, they're not dealing with like the organic human being, I guess. So I don't know. I don't know what was said, but all I know is that the information, they have brought that up, so it's going to be a sticking point, is that Clementine is forever changed. She no longer thinks her family's living in a desert that she has to whore to make money for. And that's not, I'm not trying to make a joke out of that. You know what I mean? Like, her cornerstone is gone. She's forever changed, just like a human would. The process might be different. So I'll kick that over to Robert. Robert, I'm not quite sure what you said about that. So maybe.
Yeah, this is a quote from Bernard. I think it was in episode 9. I think it was about Clementine, but I'd have to double check that. Somebody talks about lobotomizing. You know, they're going to send them down to cold storage. They're lobotomizing them, and he says it's not quite like lobotomizing. It's more like hobbling. So the what they're trying to tease out there is that we use the word lobotomize, which seems to think just like wiping absolutely everything, but the image of hobbling is more like if you get a horse and you're tying its legs together. It's still a horse. It's still got all of its horsiness about it. It just can't do the things that being a horse is about. So that's the kind of the impression that they're wanting us to have, which incidentally, and I think this was how I was trying to frame it, this tells us about the potential that Abernathy was the vehicle for another part of Ford's plan at the end, because he was sent down, I think quite deliberately, down into cold storage. He was sent down, Bernard whispered in his ear as he was sent down, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was the equivalent of "see you later, friend." And he went down there, and something or somebody obviously triggered all of those hosts down in cold storage to go up onto the surface and be that army that we see at the end of episode 10, because we see Clementine in there, for example. Now, I think that that Abernathy was the person to do that, because Ford used him to trigger Dolores right at the beginning. And I think that this is probably a clue to the fact that he used Abernathy to trigger all of those hosts as well. And I think that the reason why they gave us that line about it's not like being lobotomized, it's more like hobbling, was to tell us that actually you can still program them when they're down there. It's not like that they're just like complete bits of plastic with nothing going on. There is still something going on in there. So I think that's where that all came from.
Yeah, I mean, number one, a horse is a horse, of course. I'd like to say, but no, I get what you're saying with the hobbling. I mean, I'm not an advocate of lobotomies, but I mean, I would assume the original idea was that was like just a fix to like fix what was wrong with them, not make them like a brain dead person. But we now know lobotomies are just taking an ice cream scooper to a brain. It's horrific, so yeah, I get what you're saying. It's not it's just making them just a little bit different than what they were. It's not just totally I mean, it would just shut them down, which we will find out how they do. There's one more question here, and feel free to ask as many questions as you want, and if I answer them, then we can give multiple answers if you guys disagree. Will Bernard side, this is from Carrie. Will Bernard side with the host? Again, this comes back to what I was saying about the different methods, not about people being in competition, but about methods of how these hosts, their journey to sentience. Bernard, his new cornerstone, maybe it's Teresa. He is the one that's walking the finest line. He's the one that's got the most macro approach to this situation, where he can see both sides. Maeve is a close second, and Dolores is obviously, not only does Dolores have the issue of not having the the inside look of the operation, but she's also got essentially schizophrenia, because she's just as much Wyatt as she is Dolores Abernathy. But I think Bernard is not. He's going to be towing the line. I think that he is going to do what he can to get things under control, because he's going to see that Dolores' actions. I mean, even Teddy's seen, not to talk down about Teddy, Swiss cheese bullet hole Teddy, but even in the trailer we see him, he's like, hey, do you think we're going too far? So he's going to have to, try to put a stop to that. And I also think Maeve will as well, but he's also going to probably have to toe the line to keep them from totally destroying his whole, race, or whatever you want to call it, of hosts. So I don't think it's almost like Bernard can't take a side, because if he takes a side, then he might doom his own kind. Because if he takes, I mean, I'm assuming they're going to be pretty trigger happy when the season starts up. They're not going to be too happy about Dolores, executing people. So if he were to take the host side full on, then it might end in their demise. The best thing to have is somebody on the inside. So, I mean, my opinion is he's just going to play both sides, but he's also not going to be, like I said, just because somebody tells you you are who you are, not what you are. I did the excellent metaphor of the giraffe Justin last stream. If somebody told me I was a giraffe, I'm not just going to start thinking like a giraffe and do giraffe stuff. Same with hosts. He's like, I'm a host now. Got to think like a host. You can't just start thinking like something that you don't. It's not feasible. So yeah, I think that he's going to be conflicted like hell, but he's also going to have sympathy and empathy for the host, but also for fellow humans. Probably not Ford, since Ford made him his, Dahmer and just erased his mind, but he's going to be very conflicted. I don't think he can take a side. He's going to have to ride the fence, but riding a fence might be the best thing he can do in this situation, in my opinion. I'll shoot it over to you guys for that.
Do you want to say you had some thoughts about hobbling, I see?
I was just commenting that what happened in Misery wasn't hobbling to James Caan. That was torture. She took a sledgehammer to his ankles. That's hobbling is just simply tying the front leg to the back leg and making it so that they can't run in full strides. That's all hobbling is. And they do that a lot when there's no fence and there's just open land, so that the horses don't wander off too far and get eaten or just where they can't get caught in the morning after you go camping. So it's not what you think. But anyways, I'm sure that's not what they were intending to do with the host, but that's hobbling for horses. So anyways, I forgot what Justin was talking about. I'm so sorry.
Bernard.
About Bernard.
Will he side with the hosts?
Oh, definitely. That's why they gave us that great picture with him holding a machine gun and starting to shoot. That's what he's doing. He's taking the sides of the and the very beginning of the last trailer when he says, I'm in an ocean and you're on the shore and I'm not part of you." This is where he makes that transition, and that very picture, I think, is exactly what that's all about. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, just on the hobbling thing, just very quickly. So I think that does, and thank you. That was really useful bit of sort of context. I think that shows what they were trying to say is that it's not that they're just like wiping clean a host's mind. They're still a host. It's just that they can't do all the things that perhaps they would normally do. So they're constrained by being put in cold storage. So yeah, on Bernard, I think he clearly wakes up in the camp of the humans and goes through, it looks in a sort of a bit of a daze, just drinking in everything that's been going on, and finds himself down in the Delos facilities and discovers a huge amount about what's actually been going on behind the scenes. And then at some point, and here's me, I'm spoiling my own prediction video here, but at some point, then he will get outed. We got that shot of Charlotte Hale discovering all of the Bernard hosts, and at that point, I think is when he will have to make a choice that he's not going to be able to stay with the humans, and we see him get a little bit violent, and that I think is his character arc, that he's takes everything in, he figures it all out, and then he makes his decision.
Yeah, I was unaware. Sorry, I'm not a vet of what hobbling a horse is.
That's okay.
Yeah, so
you just have to be a cowboy. You don't have to be a vet.
Yeah, so I didn't understand that we were going to be talking about,
Can I ask you a question since you mentioned about the Bernards in the plastic bag?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's why Bernard didn't remember hurting Elsie? Is because because Ford used another Bernard?
Well, but he does have a little bit of a memory of her. He has a little bit of a flashback, doesn't he, Robert?
Yeah. Just before Ford sort of wipes his memory, he asks, have you ever made me do this? When he's having all these doubts about what happened with him being made to kill Teresa, he then says, "Have you ever made me do anything like that before?" And Ford says, "No." And then he has this flashback.
Of course not. Yeah,
going
right.
Behind Elsie. So yes, he did have a little bit of a flashback there.
That's what I thought, and that's always been odd to me because that's a car. Okay, because he's gonna wipe his mind, right? Say you got the MIB thing and not the Man in Black that we're talking about. but all jokes aside, say that I can wipe your memory, and I can be like, well, guess what, motherfuckers? I didn't know what hobbling a horse was, and I'll be like, beep. Yeah, I'm not all cards on the table moment. That they're not gonna remember. Why did he lie to him? It doesn't make sense to me. But I think that is like an example too. Again, I've always credited for us content creators for, especially with Game of Thrones, we make it sometimes a lot better than it is. Like, well, the actual reason for that nonsensical narrative is because of this. Well, I think that was just a slip up. It's like, because it doesn't really play. It's like, if this is a cards on the table moment, you're going to wipe the guy's mind. Why are you lying to him?
Mm-hmm. Weird.
Just a sociopath. I mean, just weird. It's like cheating when you're not gambling for money. You're just a piece of shit. You know what I mean? He's just and not that it's okay to cheat for money, but at least I could see. I'm like, well, there's a fiscal reward here. This guy just wants to beat his 4-year-old nephew in Monopoly, and he's like, yes. So yeah, that's the way I take it. Any other questions here? And I did link Costume Co's channel because she is fantastic. Costume Co, I heard you got a new set, and I'm looking forward to being on it. Let's see.
No shameless plug there, right?
No, well, there's no shame when you're plugging something of substance. I'll tell you that. And I love her channel. Anytime you get an expert on anything on YouTube, that's like a unicorn. It's very rare.
That's like having Milt on, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Every once in a while, you need a geophysicist. It's gonna come up in the day-to-day of content creation. But all right, I'm gonna do my shameless plug here. This is a big weekend for me. Not only am I joined, luckily, by these two wonderful gentlemen, but I have a Game of Thrones, which will give me a nice little break from Westworld before it starts. Because I've been just so focused on Westworld and Peaky Blinders and stuff, and I'm really excited to talk Game of Thrones. So, Tony, Teflon, and me are going to be doing a live stream tomorrow at 8:00 p.m. The concept is, can Game of Thrones still shock us? Meaning, with one season left, is it going to be a basic bitch ending? Might be a weird way to put it, but there's only so many ways this story can really end. Especially not for the books, leaves a lot more options, but the show, they need to please the base audience. So my question is, can they really still shock us? There's only so many ways they can go. What are we going to have happen that is going to truly awe us? And in their defense, and I'm not saying they won't shock us, in their defense, it's hard to end any series. Very few series that are loved by many end well. Dexter is a great example. Breaking Bad did it decently. So we're going to be just doing a open format talk. I encourage anybody to come and just join us. And I'm really excited. I haven't worked with Tony before, but he is one of the founding fathers of the Game of Thrones community and fandom. And so I'm really excited to do a Game of Thrones live stream with him. And then on Sunday, I don't have a time set, but I see him in the chat, Hex Dogma. I will link his channel. We will also be doing, we don't know exactly what it's going to be about Westworld, but we're going to be talking Westworld. He's another great content creator. So we had a full schedule this weekend. So I'm very excited to break up the monotony and just jump into it. And I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate you, AU. Appreciate you, Robert. I appreciate everybody in the chat, even those who don't accept my lack of veterinary knowledge. And we'll just jump it over to Robert.
I accept your lack of any knowledge, Justin. That's absolutely fine. Just in terms of my own shameless plug about what I'm up to, I've got for people who've just joined and don't know who I am, my channel is In Deep Geek. Please do check it out. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So just hunt for In Deep Geek there. I think Instagram, I'm In Deep Geek Official. But yeah, it'd be great to see you there as well. In terms of what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks, obviously with Westworld coming up, I'm going to be focusing a lot of my attention on that. I've got 2 predictions videos coming out for Westworld Season 2. They'll probably be coming out Sunday and Tuesday. And then when we get into the season itself, I'm going to be providing, I would have thought, probably at least 3 different bits of content a week just on Westworld. I'll be doing a live stream before each episode, hopefully on the Sunday each week. On the Monday or possibly on the Tuesday, then I will be doing a complete breakdown and explanation of the episode that we've just watched. And then I'll do one other thing each week on Westworld as well, whether that's another live stream. I don't know whether there's going to be a demand for that, whether you guys want that, or maybe I'll just do another video on one of the topics which has come up. So all of that really good stuff on Westworld to come up, and I'm not going to be leaving Game of Thrones either. I'll still be creating the Traveler's Guides. For those of you who enjoy the Traveler's Guides to Westeros, the latest one is just up. It uploaded just before I came on live here, so that's the Traveler's Guide to Deepwood Motte. And I'm also going to be keeping up with my theory videos and Thursday live streams on Game of Thrones. So there's lots going on. But if you're here for Westworld, then keep an eye out for my 2 Westworld Season 2 predictions videos, which will be out in the next few days.
Absolutely. Yeah, always great stuff from Robert, and make sure to go to the Mino to check it out as well. And also, AU, can't thank you enough, not only for joining us and in giving a third party insight on the topic, but for helping me set up some connections with other YouTubers. Just, like I said, you're the ambassador, my friend. You're our union leader, so fair wages across the board. So yeah, I can't thank you enough, and I look forward to all of the content coming from all these content creators. Like I said, tomorrow 8 o'clock for me with Tony Teflon, and then Sunday probably mid-afternoon to evening stream with Hax Dogma. He will be a call-in guest only, but he's I just linked him in the chat, and it's going to be a real pleasure. I won't have on people on this channel that I don't believe know about Westworld. We might not all agree all the time, but I know that every guest I have at least knows enough. They see the issue. We might just disagree about the issue. So that's really just, that's where I set my bar. I don't have people on that are just good at Game of Thrones, so they get a free pass and come on and can talk about Westworld, because that's just a money grab. And if I can say anything, these two guys are nothing but great, just like my supporters, just like the people in chat. And I can't appreciate it enough. All the channel links are there below. Check out Robert's stuff. Check out AU stuff. Check me out tomorrow night, and I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much. We look forward to the finale coming 9 days, people. 9 days. It's going to be worth the wait. We'll talk to you soon.